Victorian Premier Daniel Andrews remains adamant that a $380 million settlement with Commonwealth Games organisers was the best outcome possible. But it is feared the costs will skyrocket, with hundreds of millions of dollars lost on organisation and staffing.
Terms of these settlements are legally binding, and I am limited in what I can say. For instance, I'm not in a position to be able to talk to you about all the cut and thrust, offers and counter offers, all of those issues, but I can confirm a final settlement, $380 million, not a dollar more, no court action. The matter is closed out and finalised.
Well, the Premier says no more will be spent on the legal settlement. He admitted the total bill had not bottomed out and didn't think the combined costs would go past $600 million. Opposition leader John Pesutto says the government could no longer be trusted on any budget measure, and the true cost of this debacle will be significantly higher.
Daniel Andrews and Jacinta Allen may try all they like to stop the truth coming out, but we are determined to make sure Victorians know why at least $380 million of their hard-earned taxes are going to be completely torched because of the gross mismanagement and incompetence of Daniel Andrews and Jacinta Allen around the Commonwealth Games.
Well, joining me live is Leader of the Nationals in the Senate for Victoria, Bridget McKenzie. Nice to see you. How are you?
Yeah, fantastic. It's great to be in Sydney for the weekend.
Yes, very good to see you in studio. So first of all, with the announcement, what do you think? Do you think it's going to skyrocket, that $380 million?
Oh, absolutely. There's a whole raft of costs that have led us thus far, in addition to the $380 million that both state and Commonwealth governments have had to put towards the potential staging of the 2026 Comm Games. I mean, this has been an international embarrassment, and now it's been a very expensive cost for Daniel Andrews and Victorian taxpayers. We know that there's at least 90 non-executive staff on the organising committee. They've been employed for over a year to basically plan and deliver nothing. They're still being employed as of today. So I think the non-disclosure statement that the Premier was able to have negotiated is very telling that he's reaching for that handle very quickly. Our Senate inquiry into the Commonwealth Games starts tomorrow in Brisbane, and so obviously we'll be pursuing this going forward over the coming weeks and months.
And it's a disappointment. I'm speaking to Sam Birrell, the federal member for Nichols, just an hour or so ago, and he said, you know, some of the locals feel disappointed, let down. So it's the emotional, mental, financial impacts.
Absolutely. I mean, we're celebrating the Matilda, that FIFA World Cup bid took years in the making. So in terms of deciding to host the Games, there was a lot of pre-work that should have been done appropriately, gone through appropriate measures. Now the Premier's saying it isn't. And we were going to host the regional Games, so those great regional capitals such as Ballarat, Bendigo, Geelong, the Latrobe Valley and Shepparton indeed, wanted to be showcased on the international stage, which the Comm Games was going to actually give them. I mean, one of the things I'm also concerned about is the status of netball going forward. It gets funding from the Australian Institute of Sport because it's a Commonwealth Games sport. We're the world champions, and that was going to be hosted in Bendigo and really inspire a whole nother generation of young women and boys to get involved with a great sport.
Do you think it's fair, though, with Dan Andrews mentioning yesterday the cost blowout? He mentioned the invasion in Ukraine happened a couple of weeks after the announcement, plus the supply chains and so forth. Some things have been doubled and tripled.
No, I don't. I think that's one of the issues we're going to go to the heart of. We've got those consultancies appearing before the Senate inquiry to actually get to how they were costed, what are the actual changes that have occurred over time. I think it's an indictment that if you knew you weren't going to be hosting the Games a year ago, 6 months ago, well, that's when the decision should have been made, and we could have saved a lot of money in the meantime. Victorians, our athletes, our volunteers deserve better, and I think our international reputation has come at a cost thanks to this decision.
And what do you make of the announcement by Anthony Albanese, the $200 million funding for women's sport?
Oh, look, you know, I'm an ex-phys ed teacher, an ex-sports minister who really believes in community sporting infrastructure. In our previous community sporting infrastructure program, we put $30 million on the table grew it to 100, but we had over $340 million worth of applicants of great clubs locally, and we could only get to fund half of those. So I think the demand out there in clubland is huge, and it's not just for change rooms, it's for lights, it's for new playing spaces and training spaces. I'm incredibly proud, obviously, of the opposition. We've got a program that, should we win the next election, of $250 million to do exactly the same thing, because the power of sport isn't just about being physically healthy, it's also emotionally and socially really good for you as well.
As we have seen, it's just amazing, isn't it? You're going tonight?
I hope. I'm like begging for a ticket, but if the gods smile on me, yes. But I'm just been super excited just how electrifying having the Women's World Cup has been for our entire nation. But the Matildas have done us all so proud. We're fourth in the world. And, you know, I just think they've just inspired young and old, men and women, and it's a great takeout for the power of sport.
Yeah, it's really been uniting, hasn't it? It's just amazing. The Bush Summit has been a success as well. The first time it's been around the country, and you attended, of course, the Wodonga one in Victoria. A really interesting point that I heard you mention, and an obvious one perhaps to a lot of people in regional Australia, is in the regions you mentioned they have the brains and the money.
Absolutely. I mean, we produce the wealth of our nation, and we are super, super good at what we do. And you'll find a lot of rural and regional Australians in surprising places at peak of business organisations and industry bodies and the like, because you have to make do, you have to be creative and resilient as well. So often governments approach the regions with a deficit mindset. I think we've got a really optimistic and positive future if we can get the funding models right for our roads, for instance, which are broken, and things like transmission, the energy transition. Transmission lines, as you saw through the Bush Summit, huge rallies and protests at many of them, because it's just a case of out of sight, out of mind. Anthony Albanese thinks he can carpet our paddocks with millions of hectares of solar panels, forests of wind farms, and 28,000 kilometres of transmission lines without even checking if we're okay with it. And I think there's a long way to go, and people, as I speak to them on the ground, are very, very exercised about the lack of consultation and commitment to the regions by the Labor government. So let's see how we go. But I want to thank the organisers of the summit, because it was great to see the different issues all around the country, and to actually have the attention of the media and the capital cities actually on us, so we could showcase our best.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the big takeouts, again, as you know, is people in regional and rural Australia don't feel heard, they don't feel listened to. But on the flip side, you've got Ben English, the editor of the Daily Telegraph, saying that there was a survey and around 20% of people in the major cities are seriously thinking of moving to regional and rural Australia. So, you know, they want to come to the region.
Absolutely. And I think that's been a big change after COVID as well. And I think people want a sense of community that you do get living in a smaller town or regional capital. They want affordability, they want lifestyle options, plus great schools as well, and globally focused careers, which we now can offer out in the regions. We've invested a lot when we're in government in connectivity, telecommunications. It's not all perfect out there, but it's a hell of a lot better than it was 10 years ago. And that means you can live in the regions and work for multinationals and indeed capital city-based industries. So the future is bright, and we want you to all come out and live and work amongst us, raise your families, because it's a great life.
Yeah, good. And mentioning the potholes and the roads, and there's a lot to do there. But again, it's a work in progress. And of course, we've got the upcoming potential bushfire season with El Nino, and we've had La Nina as well.
And so worries about another drought, etc. So often when we talk about the regions, it's again natural disasters, drought, etc. But that is part of the cycle and the rhythm of living so close and dependent on nature. And I think that's not a bad thing. We do need to be very loud about the lack of funding in roads, because it isn't just about getting our fabulous produce and products to ports and to capital cities to sell. It's about making sure road fatalities go down and ensure that we can get to and where we need to quite quickly. And we've seen billions of dollars slashed out of road funding from Labor governments. And I think that is a real disappointment and a lack of an appreciation of the region's contribution to our nation, not just culturally, but also economically.
Yeah, well said. Well, again, watch this space, and we've got a bit of a highlight hour special at 5 p.m. Eastern for people that missed out on the summit, and they can go to News Corp and have a look online, and there's certainly lots on that. But yeah, there was plenty to unpack, and it was really good and quite bipartisan as well, and lots of different issues there.
I think so, and that was what was so good about it going to the different places. Like Port Lincoln is such a unique place. Their fishing industry is world class, managed by science, exporting to the world. And unless you go to Port Lincoln, you wouldn't even know that we supply so much tuna to Japan, etc. So making sure that we could showcase our stories in our places, I think was a great highlight, because we are quite diverse. One country town is very not like the other, but it was great to be able to have that opportunity right across the country.
People will be packing their bags listening.
Fingers crossed.
There you go. Thanks, great to see you.
You too.